what was that drove you, Andy? I know you read that book and you got excited, but it would have taken a little bit more than that, I think, to want to, have that, we called it the two marshmallow effect in emotional intelligence, to want to put aside that thing instead of having that instant gratification. What was what was that vision that you had at that time?
And the key is the word you just said. It is vision. It's that for the first time in my life, I had one. It wasn't about what's happening tomorrow. It's about, I wonder what it looks like at 30. I wonder if I implement these things and what my life could look like. I wonder what things I could have that I didn't think I could have before. I wonder what I could create. It was always, I wonder, as opposed to the limitations we put on ourselves, which was based on my upbringing, my environment. I remember a lot of negativity about, buying a house at that age, the risks associated. I mean, we're talking, Dom, back then it was $120,000 for a 3x1 in the suburbs, 25 minutes from the city. So for me, I look back and think, why didn't I buy a 4? That's the feeling. But, it was exactly what you just asked. It's that for the first time ever, I had a vision of something grander than what I chose to believe. Meaning I stretched my vision to say, why wouldn't that be possible? And that was it, and the journey began. So that was the, those people that show up in your life, for a reason or a season, or, for me, no coincidences. It's no coincidence you and I are here now after meeting for the first time 6 years ago. And that really comes back to appreciation of human beings in our life. This was a guy sitting across that's taken time out to share wisdom that he's clearly learned from the things and experiences he had. Then who am I not to listen? No, why would I not? And to take that on board, not with ego or arrogance or I guess jealousy or anything. It was just a feeling of pure curiosity of going, wow, this is a guy that started from nothing, turned it into, why couldn't that be me? Why couldn't I do the same? So yeah, that's really it. I had a vision for life.
You're amazing, Andy. And I know that you've shared with me your journey of how taking it from that. So you're starting off as a mechanic, and then you start off your own business. Here you are already buying properties, one a year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You made that one of your goals, and then you started off your own business at the age of, what was that, Andy?
23, I started the first mobile mechanical business. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So 18 years old, you're this entrepreneur, you're driving this, and then subsequently you ran a cafe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ran a cafe. All throughout that, you started on your journey as a coach, and at age 30, I think you shared with me that you bought one of your goals was to get a Ferrari. Is it Lamborghini or Ferrari?
Ferrari, yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And tell me about that. Was that a goal that you set, and how did you feel when you achieved that goal? Really interested to hear about that.
It's fascinating in the story in when I share this, and as you know, I do a lot of work with youth, and the one thing is I always put myself in their shoes and remember where I was. As that 18-year-old kid that read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that for the first time ever thought about this vision and thought about, I wonder if that's possible. Then anything's possible. And so I set a goal, and here's what's funny, Dom. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got a picture of a red Ferrari there. I got a picture of, like the big house and, all the things that, define success for me as that 18-year-old kid. And I had it written with words, right? So every morning when I would wake up, the first thing I would see was this thing, this little poster, right? A4 piece of paper. Here's what's ridiculous, Dom. I remember it. I can recite it to you. On or before the 11th to the 12th, 2010, I'll be 30 years of age and will acquire $1 million in assets by investing in property, shares, and by running a business. I'll know I achieved this when I have a bright red Ferrari parked in the driveway. Dom, morning and night. And even when that voice said, it can't happen, it's never going to happen, I read it morning and night. And so, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book went on to Think and Grow Rich, went on to, learning from some mentors. I paid for personal coaching. I went and did the Tony Robbins journey. And all throughout that, it was just making the vision clearer. And so I set that goal as an 18-year-old kid that, I'll know I've achieved, the definition of success, in my opinion, as the shallow 18-year-old when I've got all the trinkets of success. And so that was it. It was the Ferrari must happen. But I guess what's really cool, Dom, is not the story. It's always, we hear this and we know it innately, yet it's not until something happens, then we can look back on the journey and appreciate. And that's the thing I never did in the journey that went. I never stopped to appreciate it. It was always like drive, go, much like in corporates and much like we experience in the work we do, it's KPIs, it's whip, it's push. And that's what I did for myself in growing the business and employing people and expanding things. And like you said, one property a year was my goal. And one year specifically, I bought 2 properties in 1 year. But at what cost? Everything has a cost. Just drive, push, whip, just going for it. And it wasn't until the Ferrari actually happened. And I think probably that's the most important part of the story, I feel. It's that, as an 18-year-old kid, I never believed it. And there was probably a part of me that still never believed it the whole way. And I tell you that, Dom, in Sydney is where I went from Perth over to Sydney is it Leichhardt? I think it was Leichhardt. There's a dealership there. And
Little Italy in Sydney.
Yes, that's the place. That's it. Of course, that's where you buy a Ferrari. You get a spaghetti bolognese and a Ferrari in the same spot. So that's definitely the place, right? So I went all the way to Sydney. I flew over because I'd put a deposit on this car. I've been busting my hump for all these years. And, I managed to, I had equity from property and things to buy this thing, right? This realized dream. And here's what's amazing, Dom. This is the bit of the story that most people don't share and I feel is really important. It's that I arrived to pick this thing up and it was very surreal. I'm standing there. The Vince, I remember the guy's name. Of course, his name's Vince, right? And what was really cool is he had a phone call. He said, I'm going to be back in a moment. I just got to take this call. And he left me with this thing, this 10-year dream. So I happened at 29. I set the goal at 30. But I failed in my goal. I did it at 29 years and 4 months, Dom. So I'm left with this thing, right? I'm standing there looking at this thing in awe, and it's very surreal. And I remember I opened the door and I've just looked at it, and I've sat in, and the first thing that happened is I've grabbed onto the steering wheel, and the very first unconscious thought, the very first thing that entered my mind was, is this it? Is this all there is? And it was this holy, scary moment of if I've worked all this effort for something that I don't even appreciate, it was that moment of going, wow. And the best way to put into context, Tom, is you remember one of my favorite cartoons as a kid was the Roadrunner. Okay, so he never gets caught, right? But the coyote doesn't give up. The coyote just keeps whipping himself, literally, and he bang, bang, bang. He gets whacked all the time, and he just keeps going, right? What would happen if he ever caught the Roadrunner? What would happen then? And that's how I like it. It's like if he ever caught it, what actually happens? And one of the things that's quite amusing, if you go on YouTube, you'll see a cartoon they've made up of what happens if the coyote caught the Roadrunner. And then he turns into an alcoholic and he's overweight and he's got no purpose in life and he's lost his sense of direction until he finds it. And that's what happened to me. It got to a point at this realized dream. I brought it back, and I was always smart with money. I didn't buy the car just to buy the car. I turned it into a business, and it was the very first ever rental of exotic cars in Perth. So it was Perth Ferrari Hire. I set that up over in Perth, Western Australia. So Dom, that was like a real pinnacle part. It's like, for me, it was a closing off of that journey of chasing things outside of myself and starting to look within. That's what this steering wheel did for me. It made me look within for the first time ever.